Hello everyone, Xanaro Gaming coming at y'all with another video, and in today's video we are finally doing the State of the Meta report for the last month of the Union Arena trading card game. I waited a little bit longer to do this State of the Meta report because we've had a lot of rare battles take place at a lot of locals, online locals, and most of the events that have been put on here are a lot of rare battles or pre-release events and things along the likes of that. So with that being said, I try to take a little bit longer to wait until we got two like 50 decks. You know, that's usually kind of what I want to do is get around the top 50 list and see where everything falls into place there. So on the pie chart today, we finally got to that 50 points. So all of these are from a certain time period, 621 to 721 being a full month of, locals, webcam, locals, people's, local game stores. And there has been a lot of stuff posted on here, but like I said, there are so many release events that this month has taken a while for us to get to the 50 different topping deck list in here. We're not going to go over the deck list too much. I will do a separate video for that. If y'all leave a comment down below for me to do it, I will love to do it because there are some surprise picks on here. But getting to the pie chart reveal, I think it's to no one's surprise that Blue JJK is absolutely the best deck in the format of the game currently right now. This being said, obviously recency bias does play a big part in the Union Arena trading card game with so many different IPs coming out. A lot of people want to play some of the stuff, but we can see here with having 16 different types of decks on this list that recency is not always just enough to make certain decks pop off. But Blue JJK did, get recent support that made the deck even more consistent and better. I am lumping Blue JJK as whether you're building the deck, Nanami version, or, straight Sakuna. Anything that falls into that will just be the Blue JJK deck because I think so many of the pieces do flow between the 3 or 4 different styles that you can play the deck that, it's hard to distinguish that. I just consider them all Blue JJK decks, and it is currently taking up almost 25% of the pie chart for a whole month, with this being recency of other sets coming out during this time period, right? Black Clover being something that's still fairly new. The other stuff from the set that came into play, the new Bleach stuff, Sword Art Online still is very popular. So it is really cool to, just cool if you like to see that a deck does so well, maybe not so cool if you are tired of seeing it. But at least I can say now is that people's decks and builds with this particular deck are very different. It's not the same cookie cutter thing anymore. There are different ways you can build a deck, and it is showing that it is still the most popular, most played, and highest topping deck. Just going through doing these tournaments and looking at all the results, it's definitely the most represented deck. So I do expect it to do well. But at the same time, there are other decks that were represented almost as closely. That being Purple Kogias, Purple Bleach, Blue Bleach, and the Black Clover, the red package. Those decks were pretty close to the Blue JJK participation, but Blue JJK just performed better because the deck is just so absolutely incredible. Now, out of 50 tops, Blue JJK got 11 tops. That is a big percentage of the pie chart. It is double over any other deck in the current format in tops over the last month. And that says a lot to just how strong this deck is. It's not going anywhere. It's definitely the pick to take. If you were going to a big event, you should play this deck if you want to give yourself the best chance. With that being said, I don't think it is a tier 0 deck. I think you'll see that one of the surprise decks, which is the next one we're going to go over, has a really good matchup into the Blue JJK stuff because it does have such a quick, excuse me, quick way to put pressure on their opponent for double damage and impact. And that is going to be Purple JJK Toto Mekamaru deck. These decks are so much fun to play. I'm so excited to see that this deck is popping off and that people are playing it. 5 tops in the last month, with a lot of those being in the most recent tournaments coming up. So definitely some recency bias there. Like I said, none of this counts any rare battles or anything like that. So these are regular tournaments that have taken place with this deck, and it has gotten recent tops, and 5 of them, which is a lot. So a lot of people are on this deck right now. If you don't know what this deck does, it is just the Kyoto High package, and you got a new Toto and you got a new Mekamaru setup in it that I think makes the deck so powerful, so explosive, so consistent. You have recursion in it. And if you take the time with this deck, the plays are not super complicated, but they are really, really strong. You could do a lot with this deck, and I'm excited to see Toto finally show up on a pie chart like this because I love Toto. I love this deck. I think a lot of people were sleeping on how good this deck would be, myself included. I thought it would be a really good deck, but I did not think that it would show out like this. And I think that it just has to do with this deck is a little high rolling now because if you do see the full lineup, you can really pressure your opponent, punish their board while getting in damage 2 and impact 1, really getting 3 life in on your opponent while clearing a body off their board and messing up their energy line. If you have the final in your hand to, get the 4 plays instead of the 3, it can really demolish what your opponent does. And then your opponent still has to worry about the big body on their turn. It is such a good deck. I am so excited to see Toto doing well. And if you're fans of Toto, build it. I promise you, you can do well. It is a really, really strong deck. Now, I do foresee in the future, once this, isn't so recent and popular, a lot of people probably will jump off on it because I do think that in the newest set coming out, being the Full Metal Alchemist set, that there is a deck that kind of does what Toto does, maybe not as aggressive, but way more controlly. And I think some of the players who are just getting into Toto are gonna want to play Mustang. The blue Full Metal Alchemist deck is a very hyper rolly consistency engine, control your opponent, and I think that that's gonna sit in the same spot as kind of where the purple JJK Toto Mekamaru deck is sitting. But doing the boogie woogie is so much fun to do, and I'm glad to see that this deck is performing well, getting 5 tops over the last month. A lot of those being recently in the last 2 weeks with the deck being out here recently. Coming in, this is a three-way tie with these 5. It just so happened that I put it in alphabetical order. So technically in third place is, purple JJK, Toto Mekamaru, purple Kogias, the Gawain, and then purple Bleach. So all 3 of these decks got 5 tops, showing that purple Bleach and purple Kogias are still really powerful, very consistent decks. Purple Kogias just staying up here is just to show a testament to how good the deck is, but it doesn't get as many tops as Blue JJK because this deck is not as simple to play as Blue JJK is. Whereas Blue JJK, you play your stuff down, you're always going to get value off of stuff. And in the purple code Gios deck, you do have to think about your plays a lot more. Your energy is a little bit harder to manage with the 5 energy needing you to do stuff. You don't have a crazy late game engine like the Blue JJK does. And I know a lot of people are tired of seeing this deck, but I personally do not have a problem with purple code Gios. Now, it is one of my favorite decks. I do love the deck, but it does take a skillful pilot to really maximize this deck and know your own deck and what you have in it to be able to work against it, right? But 5 tops, this deck's not going anywhere. Still really, really powerful. And then purple bleach just being so consistent. Now, there are 2 different builds that are going around, whether you play the Squad Zero version or you're just playing. I have not seen very many Renji Rush. It's just like traditional purple bleach with the new Ichigo added into it as well. But the purple bleach deck is really, really strong. You have removal, you have a lot of raid targets, and you have a lot of 4K bodies that, have a lot of triggers. Both of these decks, all 3 of these decks, really are just like 3 of the best decks with trigger in them. Blue JJK, Purple Code, and Purple Bleach, all having a ton of triggers, all being at the 44 to 48 spots in their list about where they are. And I guess the only thing I could say about the Toto Mekamaru is that it usually has to run a couple more cards that are bricks in life. Being able to be on that lower end of the 40. It's still in the 40s, which makes it a very competitive deck, but these other decks definitely are on the high end, only running 2 or 3 cards each that do not have triggers, making them very, very powerful. But that is bringing up second place. All 3 of these decks getting 5 tops, which is really, really exciting to see a newcomer just splash on the scene, being the Toto and Mekamaru, because I love this deck. And I've been playing it for a long time since it came out, and I've had a lot of success with it, playing with it myself, and I've seen other people, but now it does have the support and the other raid targets that really let you, pressure some of these other decks, whereas maybe it's a not as consistent as Blue JJK, obviously, but the ceiling is there on the turns where you can pop off and go into your Toto and your Ultimate Mekamaru in the same turn. That play is absolutely so strong. So if you want some tips on how to play against this deck, get rid of one of their raid targets as soon as possible so they can't hit you with that double damage impact turn and clearing off a body and putting something to the back line. It is really, really good. But coming into third place, we do have one deck alone sitting at 4 tops, and that is going to be Blue Sword Art Online. This deck is the premier aggro deck in the game. I know I keep saying that, all the time, and other people believe it's other decks, but you can see from consistency that this is the one that keeps showing out because it is really, really consistent. It's not as piece reliant as a lot of the other combo aggro decks, and it's not as fragile as those decks. You really only need to see one of each of the names. It doesn't matter which one you really have, and then you're able to pop off big time. Being able to stay at that 4 energy ceiling as well too. Some of the lists that I went through, a lot of them were only running 2 of the 5 drops to show you just how powerful the consistency is in this deck. Just trying to be really consistent, get that 4 or 5 combo attack off plays, and then your opponent has to answer your board, and if they don't, you just do it again the next turn. It is a very scary deck to go up against, but it's just not as consistent having to see that setup to get these powerful plays where these other decks, outside of Toto, you need setup for that deck, but like purple, bleach and code, and then blue JJK, not needing as much setup, just being able to play down their raids and get a ton of impact. The blue sort of online does need you to have the combo to be able to pop off. Coming into fourth place is going to be Blue Bleach, which is really cool to see it be the only deck to get 3 tops. So making a difference from itself here, being the decks that get multiple tops, not like a surprise here to see the Blue Bleach, but considering how well this deck was at the time in Japan, I think that this deck is a big example of how different the meta here is in America as it is over in the Asian countries, because Blue Bleach was a menace over there when it came out, right? And here it is a really, really strong deck, but it's not a deck that is just coming in and trying to be, tier 0, and we have not had that yet. Blue JJK is definitely the most consistent, and a lot of people are speaking for tier 0, but I think that you have to take up between 30 and 50% of a pie chart on any kind of topping throughout a month to even be considered tier 0. It's definitely a really strong deck, but just one note to take that, Blue Bleach is a really strong deck. I think that this deck is a lot harder to play than a lot of people initially thought, though. And there are multiple ways that you can build it, but this deck is really, really strong. If you take the time into it, you can get a lot of value out of this deck, but it's not as easy to pick up as a lot of people probably would have hoped for. Now, going in, those are the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different decks. I think that these decks definitely stand out from a lot of the other ones. You could tell here with the toppings here being the top performing 6 decks. But I do think that there is room for 4 or 5 other decks to come up to round out that top 10, which is exactly what we have with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different decks all getting 2 tops throughout this period, being a really good showings for Green One Punch Man Saitama, Yellow Sword Art Online. This is the Goddess Knights deck. A lot of these decks share a lot of the same things. Most of them are kind of a Goddess core with a Knight sub package in it, but I'm considering those both kind of the same package of the deck, just like how I do with the Blue JJK. Yellow One Punch Man Saitama, red Black Clover Black Bulls, and then purple Black Clover Black Bulls is definitely a deck that I rated a little lower than what it has been performing. I did not think that this deck would have the plays and the power to compete with a lot of these other decks, at least not in this sense, right? I didn't think it would be a tier 2's deck. I definitely said it was a rogue, close to topping-ish deck, but it has been performing really, really well, and really excited to see that, the purple Black Bulls engine is there, and you have a lot of raid targets, you have a lot of consistency in it, and the same thing that goes said with the red Black Clover Black Bulls. I think that this deck in particular, the Asta being a little expensive to start, had a lot of people at our locals not wanting to build it just because they're like, I don't want to spend another. We're getting to a year of the game, and now people are probably being a lot pickier, having so many decks based off about the ones they want to build. And this is definitely the more expensive deck to build. The last I checked, those super rares for a card game, right? Like, not bad to have to spend $8 on the main super rare in your deck. But the alt arts are a little pricey too. But this deck is really, really strong, and I'm a little disappointed to see this not take up more slots in the tops in these tournaments. I think it just had to do with a lot of people in Black Clover liking a lot of different decks. You have the people on the green Black Clover, the 3 Energy Rush, the purple Black Clovers, you have the purple Dark Triad, you have the 3 Ladies in Red deck, and you have this deck. So I think that the Black Clover set in general just has not one big deck that everybody likes to play. All the decks are really, really good, and it speaks a lot of volume to that set because I think every single one of those decks I just mentioned are on this list outside of the Dark Triad didn't make it this time period, but last time period we saw 2 different tops on that one, right? Yellow One Punch Man and Green One Punch Man Saitama are decks that are not going anywhere. I do think that ramping it this moment in the game is taking a back seat. There are so many decks that even if they're not straight aggro, swing at you like crazy, like the Blue Sword or online decks, or if they are just more value engine, stay consistent packages like these other top decks. People know how to play against Green One Punch Man Saitama now, and it's very clear about what you do. You swing at them early. Sometimes you don't even waste your rage. You just try to throw out the 4K bodies and not waste your card advantage. And I think that that is, really stomping on the Green One Punch Man Saitama players. But the deck is still the best selling in the game. If you get to your Saitama, you do just absolutely win the game. I've never seen anyone lose after being able to play that card down. I know that that probably does happen, but if you get there, you win the game, right? And so a deck like this, which has consistency in all the pieces that it needs, is never going to go anywhere. This is the premier ramp deck ish, you could say, in the game, and it is going to be the Green One Punch Man Saitama. Now, touching on the Sword Art Online, the yellow deck, this is just really good, low to the ground, good raid targets. You have 12 different raid targets that you can play in the deck, makes it really, really strong. This deck has been so much fun. I'm glad to see how strong this deck is, and I'm glad that I was on this one early. Definitely one of my favorite decks. It is my favorite deck from that particular set to play with. It is so rewarding to know when to take your life, when to use your raids, when to press your advantage onto your opponent. Yellow One Punch Man Saitama, just staying a strong deck, doing a little bit of everything. And like I said, if there's one deck that I tell people to get into the game and play, like this is what do a little bit of everything kind of Union Arena deck, and that's not too complicated to play. It is Yellow One Punch Man. That is the deck that I try to get a lot of people to play. Buy you two starter decks, put them together, get a couple super rares, and you can perform well at this deck. And it shows here, right? But those are the 5 different decks that have gotten 2 tops, and I think that that rounds out the top 11 decks on this pie chart, and I think that, the only one that is a surprise, and I'll go back to saying it, I've spent a lot of this video talking about it, is the Toto Mekamaru. I think that this is so exciting to see. A lot of people loved this deck. I talked to a lot of people community, a lot of people at our local game store. Me, a buddy, and another buddy love this deck, and the support has really made it very, very powerful. So the people who have been waiting to put this deck on the scene are now getting to play with it and get tops in these tournaments, which is really exciting. Now, rounding out the in here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 unique different decks that all got 1 top in this time period. And I won't talk on any of these too much here. The only thing that is a very important note is that there was a definite Goddess Knights deck that was separated when I looked at the deck list that was just the Knights. No goddesses added into it, and that is, when you can tell that separation, I separated it here. So if you want to add the yellow SAO Goddess Knights deck, one more, technically it would be, up here in the 6% with blue bleach. But I did want to make a note that this one was strictly off the list. I could tell that nothing else was mixed in it. And when something like that happens, then I can do that. Whereas the blue JJK is a lot harder to do something like that on. Trying to split it between, the Megumi engine, the big drop 7K one, or 7 energy one, and different stuff like that, because they all run a little bit of everything, where this person was just a strictly Yellow Knights player, which was awesome to see. So if you technically want to add that onto the Goddess deck, then it just puts it a little bit higher than these other decks getting an extra top, which is fair if you want to do that, but I wanted to separate it to give acknowledgement that a singular deck of that one got in here. Much to my surprise, and I'm really, really excited, is that a green black clover captain's deck did manage to top throughout this weekend. I could probably assume a couple of people who play that who probably could have been. They are like me and love green. Really awesome to see green getting some representation on this list because there's not a lot, right? And I do love this deck, and this deck can do some really cool things. But if your opponent has kill spells in their life, it really wrecks this deck. But if your opponent doesn't find a kill spell, there's not a lot of ways to answer the boards that the green Black Clover Captain's deck can do, because you can just keep swinging in, playing 4 or 5K bodies, getting value off of playing them, and your opponent really just has to hope that they see a kill spell in life, or they can play one from their hand. And a lot of games that doesn't happen, right? Like you may see one kill spell, and that would be like kind of average in a game, to be honest. And if you don't hit something crazy in life, this deck really can run you over, and you need help from your life, or you be able to find a kill spell in your hand to get rid of her. And if you don't get rid of Marioliona, she will wreck your face for sure. Going through this, we do have a yellow JJK Megumi list popping off here. Now, this is one I'm a little bit disappointed in too. I know the player who did this one. He's awesome. I'm glad he keeps playing this deck. I think this deck is really, really powerful. Him and I are both really high on this deck, but a lot of people aren't playing it. For some reason, just being discouraged, I think, from how the deck used to play, and you had to try so hard to win. But this deck can be, I think, the second best aggro deck in the game. I think that it can push Blue Sword Art Online as the best aggro deck in the game because you have different engines now, you have different value pieces, you have ways to really push for the game, and your ceiling on the energy is so low. The new Megumi helps a lot. The new Shadow Clone, not Shadow Clones, but the Shadow Beast things are really, really strong. The Bunny and the Elephant. This deck, if you're looking for a deck to play and you like playing kind of combo aggro against your opponent like that, then this is definitely a deck you should pick up. It is very powerful, and I think the one topping here doesn't show enough about how good this deck actually is. The green black clover 3 cost rush black bulls deck. So you see here we're only missing the three ladies in red also has, I think, a top on here somewhere. Maybe not. Not on this particular one. No, so we're just missing 2 decks. Like, you can see how strong the Black Clover set is because that is so many decks on here with this deck getting a top. This deck can run you over really, really fast. It's one of the few decks in the game that can stay at 3 energy and just rush you down with raid targets, play down. And even if you have big bodies, they don't care because they're going to swing in enough times that you can't block out through. And a lot of times on turn 1, this deck will just try to start rushing you down because they only really need 2 energy to keep swinging in on these plays and then only even play at the 3 energy when they're ready to play their raid targets, ready to get down their Asta, and only going to 4 whenever they need to get the big boy down. So this deck is really, really fun too. A very interesting deck. Really cool and glad to see it get a top on here. The purple JJK Mahito Ghetto. The deck did get support. I love this deck. I've been hyping this deck up for a long time. I do think that it is a, big ceiling, high skill cap deck, right? You're not just going to pick this deck up and do well. This list was very interesting. This would be one of the decks I would definitely want to go over the deck profiles on because your package of how you want to build this deck is very complicated. And it's up to you, the player who builds this deck, knows what your deck can do to do all your plays because now you have a plethora of Mahitos and Ghetto cards that you can play with and figure out how do you want to control your opponent. But the turns where you have to make your opponent get rid of 2 of their characters is just so powerful when you get to pop that off that it is hard for them to come back in the game sometimes. And this deck is one that if you put a lot of time into, you can do really, really well. I love this deck. Glad to see someone got a top with it. And then Metal Bat. Sorry, I was on the Metal Bat on that one. Metal Bat got a top. That is probably Joey. I would assume it's him. I didn't get to see who the list was on there. I just saw it was Metal Bat, but I would assume that it was Joey because he loves playing this deck and it is really, really good. If it's not Joey, who else is playing Metal Bat and representing? Shout out to you guys or just Joey in general. But this deck is a great control deck. Really upset not to see the Hashiras on here because, like I said, I am a big promoter of Metal Bat and the Hashiras as premier control mid-level, like throw down 4K bodies, get value off your bodies, and just make your opponent have to answer 4K bodies. And I do think that Metal Bat does it a little bit better than Hashiras, but I do think the Hashiras have a little bit more versatile of, a little bit harder deck building, but more versatile on what you could do with that deck. Glad to see Metal Bat get a top here. We've already touched on Megumi. I think I put Megumi on here twice. But yeah, it's just one Megumi on here. Yeah, I did put Megumi twice, but just one yellow Megumi, green one punch Metal Bat, green black clover, and the green black clover captain's deck. Now, like I said, I spent a lot of time on it, but my biggest surprise from this last month is just how well Toto and Mikamaru are doing. I wanted to get this out before Full Metal Alchemist officially releases because I know that deck will come into the meta and really switch some things up, right? Like we've seen these pie charts differ every time I do them. Whether I do them 2 weeks to a month, I think a month is a good time period to let everyone get all the rare battles and all this other stuff out, and then we could take one good adjustment to it. But I am super excited about the card game. There are so many decks. Now I am upset. Let's touch on something here. I usually keep up all the decks here. Some noticeable decks that are not on here, right? The red black clovers, 3 ladies in red, not on here. I do know that a lot of people in their Black Clover builds for the red are running some of the ladies in there, and I think that that is probably the best way to play the deck because the red Black Clover three ladies in red deck that I love so much. That's one of my favorite decks from the set. It is a little harder to play. It's not as simple as you would think, and I do think that their engine supports the Black Bull's engine really really well. Um, Gojo. Green SAO is not on here, a deck that I talk about all the time that like where are the green SAO players? This is Yuki, but in general there is no green SAO on here, which is absolutely so surprising. I think a lot of people just got burnt out on this deck, and a lot of people are just switching off of green ramp decks, which I am a little disappointed to see because Gone and Friends and Kurapika also green decks not doing very well in the meta at the moment. So it just shows that green is struggling a little bit for some support. The Demon Slayer decks, no Tanjiro Nezuko on this list, which I think is the first time ever we've not seen it represented and not get multiple toppings, which is very, very surprising to be absolutely honest. And the green train hurts even more. Suzaku not getting any tops during this time period, or green Bleach. And then Yellow One Punch Man, the Esper Sisters deck did not get a top. Just some notable decks that are usually on this pie chart here because you can see they're usually listed, but they have no toppings. I think that one thing to take overall is that green is struggling, and we have been really like shout out to any of my green players who keep playing it. If you're playing green, you're kind of fighting a battle against a lot of these decks that are a little bit more consistent and a little faster, but we can still do it. I need to find time to play in some of these tournaments so I can help jump up these green numbers because I am really disappointed to see that green is not doing well, but the game is in a good state. That is just me being upset about that. We got to change what we want to see, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. And I want to see more green decks topping, so I need to play in some tournaments. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. What were you surprised to see on here? What are you upset that is not on here? And what decks are you guys looking forward to seeing in the future? What are you guys excited about Full Metal Alchemist? I do think that if I had to make a prediction, this blue right here is going to get a decent chunk taken out of by Roy Mustang. I think that if I had to make a prediction, Roy Mustang in the next month will have at minimum 5 toppings in the month in tournaments. Hold me to it in the comments down below. Make sure on the next video I do in the chat, you tell me how I predicted it wrong. But don't forget to leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everyone hanging out with me today. Peace.